Hi, welcome to Tales from the Tap. My name is Frankie, and this is my co-host.
Stan the man.
And we are excited to talk to you about the newest changes in the metagame post just having a little bit more time with Foundations. But before we do...
Post Thanksgiving, because I was a hungry boy.
Yeah, very hungry boy. Didn't plan on this in our small talk, but what was your favorite dish?
Oh, okay, so Thanksgiving. I have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
First of all, I thought this holiday was going to suck, because obviously you talk about like real life stuff going on.
This is my first holiday, like, divorced.
Yeah. For us, it was without Winter's father, so it was a little weird. And usually we go to like her family's house, and then we'll go to like my aunt's house, and we'll try to visit my mom. And 3 Thanksgiving in one day, but at least they're all within like 10 to 15 minutes driving distance of each other.
That's
so it's not
nice.
like the worst thing in the world. But my brother, he's so funny. He's always like, lasagna is my favorite, which my brother's like 13 years younger than me. But when I was his age, I was always like the same casseroles, because like, we grew up hella poor. So like anytime my mom made a casserole, like I knew I was eating for days. And I'm tall, so like I was really hungry growing up. You know what I mean? Now I should probably turn it down a little bit. But growing up, I was eating nonstop. Like my friends would be throwing away their lunches. I'm like, slide them over to me. So like by the end of like elementary school, people knew like, oh, don't throw your lunch out. See if Stan wants it. I'm like, yes sir.
Too blessed to
shout
be
outs
stressed.
to all the people that were hooking it up back in the day. I don't know why you didn't want your food, but enjoy those French fries. Anyways, my brother's like, I really want lasagna. So last Thanksgiving, Winter and I literally got one of those like oven lasagnas that you get at the store. Made it, brought it over, and he was like, oh, this is awesome, this is the best, thanks so much. He was like super happy. He thought Winter made it. He's like, this Winter makes good lasagna. And we're like, yeah man, whatever, just so that my mom can like focus on the good stuff, like the mole, the rice, the beans, chicken, turkey, beans, greens, potatoes, tomato. But no, like my mom and my uncle, they freaking go hard on the cooking. So like I wanted them to focus on the good stuff. This time my mom made a big ass lasagna, and don't get me wrong, my mom can make Italian food, but she made 2 lasagna trays, like literally from like mic to mic, that big, 2 of them. And so like they were huge. I have one in the fridge now that you saw me bring in when he picked me up, because I took some leftovers. I was like, if you don't want them, I'm gonna take these leftovers. I swear to God, I don't know what was the difference in the Walmart lasagna, but he was like, oh, mom made it wrong. It's supposed to be crunchy on the outside or something. It's stale. And we were like, what are you talking about? He's like, the lasagna is stale. And we're all like, okay, well, we're going to eat it then. Chilaquiles, green mole and red mole.
I love chilaquiles.
Yes, so good. My mom, like, the only thing that sucks about my mom's chilaquiles is probably not a bad thing for normal people, but she gets these huge onion chunks in there, where I like them more like finely diced.
Yeah.
But she was throwing big chunks, and Winter loves that kind of stuff, like when you get to like feel the crunch.
That's
I like muscle
that's
through it
because Winter's a psychopath.
Yeah, Winter just loves vegetables.
Yeah,
So
she just...
she loves my mom's cooking, but the only thing that's hard for her is that Winter's allergic to garlic, so that kind of beats her ass a little bit.
She just powers through that one.
Yeah, and then we still got to go to her other family's house. So yeah, it was like a really good Thanksgiving for me overall. And like obviously day off from work is always nice, but then got to come in the next day. Dylan was working, so I didn't have to show up like right at 2 o'clock. I get to focus on some other stuff. Overall, no complaints. Just a really good Thanksgiving.
Sorry,
Double checking.
I had that paranoia of like, wait a minute, where's my wallet? It's not on me. It's over there. Okay, we're good.
No worries. I was getting worried for a second. I was like, did I misclick on the record button?
No.
But anyways, Thanksgiving. I don't know how it was for you. Maybe you got to see your family, but for me, I can't complain. It's been a really good week.
Yeah. So one of the things that I like didn't want to say before, but like feel like I can openly say now is like my family makes a really good Thanksgiving meal. And like recently in the past few years, we bring on like, it's my aunt's friend who's been empty nesters for a little bit, and she like was a chef. And so she...
Empty nester as in like her kids don't live with her anymore?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, like it's just her and her husband now. And so, like, and her kids are all over.
Sure.
Like, they don't live in the state. They're
so
all
she's
over.
Like,
they don't come
I
home.
want to cook, and nobody's home to appreciate it.
Yes. So we have
yeah.
taken them for the past few years now.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they do that has changed the game for me is they smoke the turkey.
Ooh.
Because I don't like turkey, like really,
Yeah.
because usually it's just dry. It's not very flavorful. Like even though like we
You
and
need
it,
to have stuff with the turkey.
yeah, and so it's like this smoked turkey that sits in this like white wine butter sauce and like
Yeah, yeah.
it's so good. And so that was really nice. And the other thing is that I'd split the holidays.
Yep.
So like it would be like I'd be at my family's as early as we could get there, and then we'd stay and then leave around 5 and then go to my in-laws' place and then have their meal. And so
Yeah.
you'd leave the day just being like,
Oh,
yeah, because you just we ate it
Not to
too.
mention,
We
you
needed
can't
like
really you can't really enjoy the time, you know.
right, because you're rushing and both people are pissed because they don't have the whole day with you. Oh, not to mention that before we'd go to my family's, we'd go to hers. We'd watch the Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, the parade in the morning.
Yes, and then we'd go to my family's and then we'd go back.
Oh boy.
And it's about like 30 minutes, which
Sure.
like isn't terrible, but like also isn't easy.
Still a lot of driving and a lot of tediousness. And
Yeah, and like compared to, I tried to be grateful because like it was my ex-wife's family that was like making the meal.
Yeah.
And like a meal's a meal. And so, but like compared to like what my family does, like it's not close.
Right, no, for sure.
'Cause,
That's how
like,
I feel
we-
about Winter's family. I'm like,
It's because like we have chefs over and like,
Right.
you know, everyone in my family cooks. So like we're all pretty up with it and wanting to try new stuff. And so,
yeah, I know where you're coming from.
it
That
was
kind
nice.
of like Thanksgiving, you need to be like on the same page with your partner. You know what I mean?
yeah. So like it was nice that I just got to be in one place and then I didn't have to like leave and go for a, you know, not awesome meal. You know, like there was the green bean casserole is like what my ex-wife's family made that was like so good and I miss that.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, like everything else that my family made was better.
Yeah,
so like,
yeah.
you
Not to mention, like, oh yeah, when all the good cooks are going to one, it's like the best because then like you can enjoy the meal, you can actually enjoy dessert. Usually we go to Winter's family for dessert. They didn't have anything. Thankfully, my sister showed up and was like, "Here's like pumpkin pie." My other sister showed up and brought like garlic bread turkeys that she makes, where like she like shapes them into like turkeys. They are so good.
cute.
Anyways, we're probably making you guys hungry, and if you're driving, I'm sorry, but not sorry.
Yeah,
Also,
sorry,
for
not
those,
sorry.
For those that noticed, we are actually a week late in recording, mostly because of the holidays and how busy we've been. We figured also like, genuinely speaking, where we're at in the metagame for a lot of the formats, there isn't a lot to talk about.
No.
Nothing that we can really break the mold on for lack of a better term, I suppose. And even though standard is very like cook heavy, it's very clear and like determined what the meta decks are, what the tier oneers are, between like Demir, Golgari, Gruul, or Boros, or Mono Red Mice as your aggro decks. And realistically, that's about it. I mean, like, Domain's kind of still hanging in there, whether you're playing like the Overlord's Domain version or like a more traditional style. There's just so many tier 2 decks. That's one of the cool things that Foundation really did. Not to mention, like, we were talking about Caretakers taking a huge L after Duskborn. Foundations really kind of dialed that back. I want to say I talked about this on the podcast before, but it's kind of funny to me that the combat triangle, if you will, is kind of inverted. Where normally it's like mid-range preys on aggro and then control preys on mid-range. And we haven't really had a real control deck in the format, partially because counterspells are bad right now, and partially
So
because
bad.
field nukes aren't also very good right now.
Also
Even though there's
bad.
so many creature decks, like you really don't want to be field nuking Sunfall. Last year, like you couldn't play against it. Now you're like, oh, I actually don't care. Like it's really kind of interesting how the format has like flipped. So mid-range decks can really beat up on these control shells. Like Caretakers is supposed to prey on mid-range, but between like Duress and Slasher and all these like really efficient threats and Enduring Curiosity, and Frank will get into this more later, but like the fact that you could draw so many cards while laying down these threats, and if you have any counter magic, it's always really efficient counter magic. It really is hard for Control to be like a deck that isn't Caretakers. And Caretakers, which is a deck that theoretically would struggle against aggro as it's a control shell, beats up on aggro because it has like much better removal for it in white with between like Elspeth Smite or whatever they choose. But the fact that they're gaining life off of Carrot Cake and that allows them to like not have to block the Screaming Nemesis, as long as you don't cut them off of the life gain, mono white seems to be like okay with playing against aggro shells, assuming you're not getting like one shot slick shotted with like a snakeskin veil. White still has really good removal for what it's worth, like Get Lost, Leyline Biting if you're playing
Get Lost. And Get Lost has never looked so good, seeing that like there's so many Unholy Annex running around.
Oh my god!
Like holy
Talk
moly.
about a card that was printed with purpose.
Yeah. Like Get Lost is definitely probably better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
now there's more enchantments that are worth getting rid of, and you can even like, if you've killed an Enduring Curiosity, just use the Get Lost to like kill the enchantment side that like had already died.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got good. It's a good time to be Get Lost.
Right. And just to finish up that point, it's funny that Leyline of Residence is really not really, it's taking a back seat since the Pro Tour, or like the World Championships, as to say. Leyline of Residence aggro was really, really powerful during that Duskborn stunt. And now, since Foundations come out, it feels like the World Championship players kind of like gave us the tools to be like, oh yeah, we really should be focusing more on the consistency as opposed to like the one shot that can happen that really just like invalidates your opponent's deck. Now that the aggro decks are more consistent, that's partially why they're able to hang even around these mid-range decks normally that they couldn't play against at all. I've like played all three aggro decks online, and even if my opponent's playing Dimir or Golgari, which is like, it should be a nightmare matchup, not really that scared. But I felt the same playing other decks as well, where I'm like, I'm the Dimir player. I'm like, man, I really don't care what you're doing that much as long as I'm playing properly, you know? There is, obviously, like, Arena's not the best for practice. If you want to play against good players, you got to go to, like, RCQs, play on NTGO in the challenges, or try to climb to high mythic and then hope that translates into like the play-in qualifiers. Shout outs to Gabe, who got day 2 today in the limited one with Foundations.
Oh yeah.
He got pretty far actually. He almost
And
got
his
to the
deck
second draft.
and his deck looked good. I was bummed when I like saw later in the day that he did not make it. I was like, for real? 'Cause
Yeah,
your
and a
deck
2-0
was
start too.
Your deck was cracked.
2-0 start, didn't get the second draft. I was sad for him, but honestly, good effort though. Yeah, there's like it's just an interesting format, and honestly, Standard has given us the most to talk about that we'll probably talk about tonight. Modern, not really looking very interesting right now, and you don't have to worry about Modern for like another couple months anyway. And then the rest of the year is just all Standard. So like we'll talk about Pioneer a little bit because it has some cool stuff going still, and we talked previously about how Pioneer, very interesting format. Unfortunate that it's not getting any love in 2025, but I think that's intentional. I know Frank is feeling the way most Pioneer players are feeling right now, where it's like, man, I really want to play Pioneer. It's such a good format.
Such a good format, and they hate me.
Fair. I just think that it makes sense what they're doing because all these new Standard players that they're going to grind, that's like a whole year of Standard player buildup that when rotation finally hits are just going to transfer to Pioneer. I feel like 2026 is going to be like a big year for Pioneer. Like calling it now, clip this later when I'm wrong. But if I'm right, swear to God, I'm clipping it and I'm sharing it everywhere. But I think 2026 will be big for Pioneer, especially after rotation, after people want to play their Shield Trids in another format that they paid a lot of money for. And a lot of the decks that are out right now easily transition to Pioneer, whether it's like you just have good staples and good mana base, or some of the deck structures are just like very similar to what's already happening in Pioneer in one way or another. Like there's already Unholy Annex decks in Pioneer that we'll get into later. A lot to talk about without there being a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and the thing that I think that it actually, now that you're mentioning it and saying like what they're trying to, for years, right? They've been trying to build Standard back to like being great.
Right.
And I think
Standard
that
has to be the front runner format. It has to be.
Yeah, and I think that them doing this makes sense. It's just such a tragedy that, in my opinion, Pioneer is looking like with the RC, it's looking the best it's ever looked.
Yes,
like
100%
the
agree.
healthiest it's ever looked, the most
Interesting.
The most interesting it's ever looked, and now we don't have any of it. And that's what I think the tragedy is like it finally feels like they got it right, and now we don't have events to go play.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, come on.
Hopefully that's enough energy though to keep people interested in it. Where it's like, man, I have this desire to play Pioneer, even without like the needs for it.
Yeah.
That'll hopefully keep that energy going. Where like when the new Pioneer players start showing up, the old ones are like, "We've been waiting for you." It's like the Lord of the Rings, where like they walk into the room and they're all happy and crying.
Yeah.
Frodo's in the bed and Gandalf's just like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
We're all playing
sir.
Pioneer now, bro." With that being said, Frank made me a lovely beverage, and cheers to you guys, and cheers to 44 episodes. Been doing this for like 2 years now, which is kind of crazy. If you haven't been watching, or if you've been watching with us and you haven't already subscribed, hook it up with a subscription. It really appreciate. It's free. It goes a long way. We'd really appreciate it. So if you're watching on YouTube, you want to like, comment, subscribe, comment literally anything. We always read all the comments. I promise.
I do. I check the analytics constantly.
Frank DMs me like, somebody said, not but yeah, like we try to respond to every comment, even if we're running a little bit late on it because we're busy with our personal lives. But it really does help go a long way.
Except for
we're already segueing into
one person. Sorry, I don't know if you saw this, but it was Rin's commander deck. We had someone like a week ago be like, "I want the deck list for this," and we haven't responded to that yet.
We'll figure it out. I'll message Rin when she's back from her family's Thanksgiving stuff in Iowa. Anyways, since we already segued into the housekeeping, the best way you can support, like we said, is like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. It really does go a long way for us. The other best way, alternatively, is to go to our Patreon. For those that are already patrons, we really appreciate the support. You guys help keep the lights on, help us
thank you.
Save up for new equipment, and hopefully in the future hire an editor, since we're going to definitely need one. Sal, shout outs to him, is helping us out with it right now. But he also has wife, kid, family,
his own channel.
So his own channel. Shout out to MTG Chicago. So we definitely want to like find somebody, and I think we've kind of locked one down. We just have to figure out the pay rate and all that stuff. So like we said, the people that are supporting us really does go a long way, and hopefully we can improve the content for you guys in the future.
And on top of that, this is a new thing I did today. I didn't even tell you about it. They have a new have a sale for Patreon, and so
that's cool.
We have a sale now, 50% off for your first month at our two highest tiers. So the tiers that get you the coaching,
and we'll look at your deck, we'll play your deck,
play it on stream,
we'll help you with your sideboard guides, all the ones that require effort out of us. Hey, that's a good deal.
Yeah, it's half off for this month. So if you
already are a patron and you're not using your perks, we're always happy to do it.
Yeah, please do.
Julian started using them recently, and Gabe a little bit, so that's kind of nice. I mean, I really appreciate you guys that just support us just to support.
Yes.
So we don't mind going out of our way to work for you guys.
Oh, absolutely.
Join the Discord. It's free access. I always try to push people there because we're already cooking and talking and brewing decks. I'll talk about some decks that Julian and I and Gabe actually brewed for Standard later.
And the Discord's getting big. We actually we almost got up to 100 people in the Discord.
And it's, I want to say it's like active. Like we always have people that are talking. You know, it's not like 2 or 3 people talking to each other. Like the whole group will get involved. And if somebody puts a bat signal out for like, I need help on this deck or this technology, or I'm going to a tournament, everybody starts coming out of the woodwork. So we're like, I think this, and we really kind of like make sure to cover all of our bases, which I like, because I do appreciate getting different inputs from people that I feel like specialize in different decks, where like one of our friends, Robert, is always playing red decks, always playing
the aggro guy.
Boros. He's the aggro guy at the store. Everybody was always like, oh, Boros guy's playing Boros. And so whenever you want to build an aggro deck, or try out a card in aggro, or play against aggro, how does my deck fare against it? I will like just tag Robert in Discord. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this card? Or how do you feel about this mana base, etc. And the same goes to like a lot of different people in the Discord, you know. So I just really appreciate all the people that have been already helping out for my own, and then obviously paying it forward to the rest of the community. So you guys are kind of the best. Really appreciate you guys. Otherwise, the usual Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. If you want to follow us there, we'll always upload on every platform, and the show will always be free. So feel free to support in any way you can, even if it's just a free option. With that being said, cheers, and let's get into the show.
All right, so updates to the metagame. First, we're going to start off with Pioneer. It looks like Unholy Annex, Ritual Chamber, and Unholy Annex. Yeah, I said that backwards this week. I said Unholy Chamber.
Oh no.
And like Ritual Annex or something, and someone was like, "What?"
What's that? Even though it sounds cooler.
Yeah. So Unholy Annex has actually revived Rakdos Midrange.
Oh, that's so nice.
So Rakdos Midrange is back. We're seeing some of the lists that are running,
Soren, and they're like, "Here's a better one."
Yeah, they're doing like it looks like the old list, like with Shieldred and just like removal. But it's
preferable anyway because it was such a fun grindy deck. But man, the Soren Vein-Ripper thing was getting old really fast.
Oh yeah,
That
it was
felt
just
like
it was
Tron mirror matches 10 years ago, where you're like, "Oh, you won the die roll. Oh, you carned me off of a Tron piece." Like, it was not good gameplay. It really wasn't.
Yeah, and it was too oppressive. Like I just had games where like you could one shot someone at like 16 life or something, and like that's wild for a mid range deck. But what I think is interesting about this list is that they're bringing in Bloodletter of Aclazotz, which makes me feel so sad that I like did not buy that card when it was cheap because now they're like $1 trillion.
Well, it was always kind of expensive because of Commander, to be fair. But that card is like, it comes out, it starts doing its thing. Everybody goes, "Wow, that's really strong," and then like all at once, everybody stops playing it, and then a new card comes out. And he's right back. Ever since he came out in Caverns, it's like, "Oh, this guy amazing." No. Wait, new set. Amazing again? No. And now it feels like he's finally kind of locked in there.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Yes, I am amazing. I'm not going anywhere." And more than one archetype is playing him between Standard and Pioneer, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is awesome is that I've seen some lists do this, which to me just gets me excited about Magic, right? So Blade of Oni has been played in some lists, and I think that card previously was garbage unplayable. Like this card is an unplayable Magic card. And now Blade of Oni is like, oh, like it's now over $1. It was not, it was like a 50-cent card. Okay. So Blade of Oni, 1 in a black, artifact creature, equipment demon. Menace, equipped creature has base power and toughness 5/5, has menace, and is a black demon in addition to its other colors and types. And the reconfigure cost to attach to a creature or unattach is 2 and double black. And
only 2 mana demon in the game.
Yeah, and what's so great about that is that, it makes some of the other cards in red black that aren't demons, like you can then still get your triggers off of Unholy Annex, which might be a way to, I don't know if they'd ever cut Mutavault because Mutavault is so good.
I think it's too efficient to cut Mutavault. Honestly, I would be playing Mutavault a lot in Standard if we had access to him. We've been trying out
the Sanctuary,
the Soulstone Sanctuary, which I should mention. I think we talked about him previously on an episode, or even last episode specifically, where I hadn't fully read what the card did. So I apologize to you guys, but when we talked about new cards that were getting played in Standard from Foundations, Soulstone Sanctuary was one of them. I didn't realize it stays a creature permanently, which we didn't mention on the last episode. That's a pretty big impact,
I saw,
but that's like such a big like deviation from what Mutavault does, where it's like you really want it to be a creature only on your turn to protect from non-instant speed removal.
Yeah.
Which is so high impact. But Mutavault activates for 1. And like so nothing's ever going to be on that level. Where like in Standard I think we have Mishra's Foundry, so it's 2 to activate. Not quite good enough. I think Soulstone Sanctuary for what you're getting on rate, slightly better than that.
Well, I think,
especially for mid range.
Yeah, well, and on top of it, like Soulstone Sanctuary, is that right? Did I say that right? Okay, Soulstone Sanctuary. It's another one of those things where like when you have like a Restless Reef or a Restless Anchorage or a Restless Cottage or whatever manland, you can just like beat in and then like protect yourself from like board wipes, any other stuff, and then like I don't know if I had like a board wipe in hand and I see you activate and I'm like, all right, here's my time, you know, because taking them off the mana is a big deal.
True. There's obviously benefits and like pros and cons to the card. I think for what it's worth, Social Sanctuary though is an interesting card design, and it does have enough pros, which I'll get into later, that Gabe kind of convinced me on the card on. Because we already saw mid-range decks playing it at 1 or 2 of it,
which I think they should.
To their Restlesses. I agree. It's like it's interesting that like sometimes you just want it to stay a creature. It's not every creature type, is it?
It's all creature types.
Oh, it is. Okay, so
Yeah. So it
that's
matters.
another reason why
It
the
matters
unholy
for like.
Panic decks are playing
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
But the fact that it stays a creature, now you don't have to worry about reactivating it to trigger your Annex is a big deal as well. And you can also tap to activate into itself, so that's also kind of nice. Wandering Emperor and Soul Stone Sanctuary would have really liked each other probably. Not that Wandering Emperor doesn't like every card in the world.
Gosh. Yeah, well, I'll get in, and I'm actually going to get into that next. That's a good transition. So, unless you had more.
No, I think we're go segue
Sweet,
away.
sweet. So, I saw this sweet list that I thought was like just a sweet list.
Sure.
But with additional threats coming into Pioneer, like adding Valgavoth,
Yep.
has made Indomitable Creativity playable again. Like a lot of 5-0 lists,
Yeah,
and like
actually,
challenge winning
Been
lists.
playing it here in Pioneer.
Well, which is funny because I just snagged up. You had from Outlaws. I bought all 4 because I was like, and what's funny too is when you're talking about cards and like their value going up of like Bloodletter, like that was a card that I think when I needed some money for something, I don't remember, but I sold a bunch of Magic cards, and that was like part of it. Was
Sure.
I like sold creativities when they were high.
Like $30 from when they were like the best deck in Modern.
Yeah, and like I just bought them at $1.50
$1,
each.
yeah.
So I was like,
I was like, ooh, because I sold a lot of creativities during that Modern season. Somebody traded me in creativities like a month ago, and I was like, ooh.
yeah, he's looking sad. But that's a deck that I would be excited to play, and I think I could keep it around a little easier. But what was awesome about the segue is that Wandering Emperor was being played in the list.
In creativity.
Yeah.
Well, creativity only flips to an artifact or creature, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, but I also love that because, right, your whole goal with creativity is to, like, control the board, survive,
Yeah.
and then do the thing.
Yep.
And when you have the ability to, like, Wandering Emperor, gain 2 life, exile something, then make a dude, then do the thing,
Right.
it just feels like, I don't know, right? Creativity is kind of like a control deck.
Sure.
And so...
I get where you're coming from because specifically with creativity, and I really, really do like the deck. I remember Christian, shout outs to one of our patrons. He was playing creativity in Modern like a year ago, and we would play a lot of practice games where I told him, I was like, I really do think creativity is a great deck. This was obviously before the One Ring kind of like started invalidating it.
yeah.
And then, because the One Ring, when it came out, creativity was still a good deck.
And how about those One Rings dropping in price? Holy moly.
Keep selling them to me, baby. But yeah, creativity stuck around. It was strong enough that it could play even through the One Ring. It's just the One Ring kind of just, if you were playing Tron, One Ring would just end it, and Tron was already good against creativity, stuff like that. As the format got more in that direction, and then Modern Horizons 3 eventually, obviously, so creativity goes from like first to worst, right? The main issue, the main game plan issue I always noticed was like you're doing so much powerful stuff, but it like has to be at sorcery speed, which a lot of times ends up being a weakness to me. And the nice part was that the deck could mainboard 4 Spell Pierces and play Teferi Time Raveler, and you could just like invalidate what they were doing as well by like just playing this hyper efficient counter magic, turning off their turn, pseudo time walking, kind of like the classic Splinter Twin remand thing. And for Pioneer's purposes, it's already a slower format, so that's an advantage to creativity. But I think that it's awesome that in addition to holding up, like when you're playing creativity and you're just going land, go, holding up whatever you do, it's usually just interaction, right? So if you can hold like Counterspell, Wandering Emperor, Pass, and you're not even a control deck, that to me feels like a really insane like play pattern. So it's like,
That's what I like. I
yeah,
want
commit
that.
to the board, Counterspell. Don't commit to the board, the Wandering Emperor. You already have a board state, exile your best guy. And when the Emperor is like playing catch up, she's not amazing. But when you're at parity, that's when she really shows her true power. And also, if you do flash an Emperor on their turn, you just created the token that you need to like creativity. And that's probably like another bonus for the deck as well. I think that sounds really fun, actually.
Yeah, that's why I picked up the stuff because I was like, this deck looks hot.
For sure,
Well,
for sure.
and I like the ability to have additional threats. Like I even saw one list that was running one Valgavoth, one Atraxa, and one Titan of Industry. And I was like, I
Yeah.
just love Titan of Industry.
So those
I
guys want
think
to hit creativity for 3 if they can, ideally.
right. And then, like, how do you lose
Right.
after that?
And Valkavoth, honestly, he really is disgusting. I'll get into a deck list that Julie and I brewed, but people are already trying him in standard, and I really think he's underrated even still. Like,
Yeah.
Valkavoth is very powerful, like super hard to get rid of too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just need a board wipe because if you don't,
It must be a board wipe, right?
yeah, it's like you sack half your board to single target it anyway.
Yeah. I had a guy in standard. He was playing against the deck that Julie and I brewed, and he had to go nowhere to hide or run or whatever it's called, nowhere to run, so that he could remove the ward trigger on it, and then still like use 2 other spells to get rid of it because I had interaction.
That is so
So it's
awesome.
like, yeah, I got all the cards out of your hand, cool, and also all that stuff that went to your graveyard, mine. Vagaboth is insane. But yeah, I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, the next stuff like is not as exciting. It's just kind of like quick stuff. One, we're seeing Curiosity in Spirits, and that's like staying.
Oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense too.
Yeah, as like a for
Spirits
that.
for sure needed that card.
Yeah, a way for them to just refill.
Are they
their,
playing the Overlord of the Mistmores?
They're not.
Oh man, I feel like that card doesn't it make spirits?
Yes. To
I feel like that card would be such a good sideboard card for them to like grind out games.
I actually didn't look at the sideboard at all, so it could be. I just looked at like what was in their main board.
Sure.
The other thing that I'm seeing is that Mockingbird is being played in like every blue typal deck there is. So like
Mockingbird is very
Spirits,
powerful.
Spirits is using Mockingbird. Blue White Humans,
Yeah.
like which I just saw a deck list for, is running 4 of Mockingbird.
It's so funny that you mentioned that too because we were talking about tribal decks with Robert and he kept saying whenever we'd play a deck he'd be like, why don't you try Mockingbird? And like all the aggro shells, oh, why don't you try Mockingbird? And we actually played a couple of decks that we replaced a Siren Storm Chamber playset with a playset of Mockingbirds. And in a lot of ways, it was just like, even if you drop the Mockingbird out to like slam a Kaito later, like you would with Siren Storm Tamer, whatever. But when you're copying like whatever the best card on the battlefield is, it's like, man, Mockingbird is insane.
Yeah, it's
Just so efficient.
well, and two for like Spirits, like copying a Lord, like that's
Yeah.
big game.
Yeah, Mockingbird makes me feel like I'm glad it didn't print like Drogskull Captain or something like that because I feel like having 8 Drogskull Captains would be really, really good in Pioneer.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. Well, I guess we're gonna get it to standard in a second, so I'll leave that be. The last thing was Nib to Light is seeing just a one of Alenda in the
Alenda
main
is
board,
so nasty.
and then one in the sideboard. And I played that this past week at Pioneer and 3-0'd, and like Alenda felt cracked every game I played it, and I was siding in
If
more.
you're drafting, force Alenda.
I was bringing in more Alendas.
Yeah.
It just feels like the card is so gross, and I don't know why they did this, but they cut from the main board. Shoot, I can't think of it now. I used to play it when I won the RCQ, so I feel sad.
Lila?
No, the rock that like 3 mana artifact when you cast a spell for how many colors it is.
Gain color, you gain mana. You gain life equal to the different mana colors.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, it's slipping my mind because it's on the big score.
Right. So they cut that from the list, which I don't know why, but that would make Alenda come down and be really big, really cracked. So I don't know why they're not doing that. But, I mean, it's still...
Maybe she is the lifelink that they're looking for.
It could be.
Because honestly, she like triggers herself really easily, being a 4/4 base.
Yeah.
Because like she feels like she should have been a 2/4 or something like that. That like becomes a 5/5.
Absolutely should have been a 2/4.
The amount of times Unlimited, and I probably talked about this already, but the amount of times Unlimited where I'm playing an Alenda and they block with a 4/4 and you're just like, and then state-based actions ruins their day. I watched it happen again with Gabe last night. Somebody like double blocked his Alenda.
I heard it. I was on that. I wasn't actually watching because I was driving, but he's like, they're doing it. They're doing it.
Yeah, it's happening. And then she gets +5 and they're hovering the cards and then the head explodes and it's like, geez. It was like Inspiring Sanctuary or something like that, right? No.
No. I'm looking it up right now because it's going to bother me so bad.
I can't remember.
So my decks and
I really am mad that I can't think of the name of the card because we were so hyped about it.
So hyped about it. All right, Niv to Light from 616. That's the RCQ I won. Ancient
Oh,
Cornucopia.
cornucopia, duh.
Cornucopia.
That's why I couldn't think of the name. We already
Man.
passed Thanksgiving. It's Christmas now.
See? It's Christmas.
Yeah, cornucopia and Alenda seem like they'd be good together. But I think
Really good
cornucopia,
friends.
if you don't need the lifelink as hard, which I think have seen a little bit of a nerf in aggro in Pioneer.
Yes.
The red black aggro deck that was like crushing isn't really like doing what it was in numbers.
Yeah.
So like maybe you don't need as much lifelink from cornucopia because cornucopia lifelink was like kind of like a ridiculous amount. It was like so overkill. Like you'd be getting like 80 life in some of these games.
Well, and that what I loved about it is that I could go toe to toe and like in some games live through Amalia,
Yeah.
like shooting me with Aetherflux Reservoir because I would
sure.
gain so much life.
Yeah. But
So I'd
she's
be like,
banned now,
if
so
I just keep playing spells,
that's probably another reason why they stopped playing it. Amalia's gone. Like you don't need 50 life anymore. Like
yeah.
that's kind of crazy. Now that you mention it. Oh man, no Amalia, no Sorin. What a time to be alive. Phoenix is next. I know for some of you people, but like I don't even know if Phoenix is like broken. People
I don't think it's.
I get a lot of doomers, and they get so mad at me when I'm like, I don't think Treasure Cruise is that big of a deal right now. But they get really upset with me when I say that, and it's like, all right, man, whatever.
Well, Stan also likes to stir the pot, so he intentionally will say stuff like that to be like,
I just,
"How do you feel, brother?"
I just don't think it's like that big a deal. And then people are like, you're just pot stirring. I'm like, all right, I definitely don't just disagree with you for no reason. But yeah, so like Pioneer's like obviously in a good spot, and there's. For what it's worth, there are a lot of new brews and new builds that are happening. And as the new standard sets have come out, there have been like tech adaptations. It's a really fun time to play Pioneer. Like if you have an LGS that's hosting a Pioneer events, keep that alive because I know ours have been like downhill in terms of attendance only because standard is so hype right now and it's hard to play multiple times a week. So a lot of our Pioneer people switch to standard.
It is hard. Even now, like where I'm done, I'm like, oh man. Well, also because I'm playing Star Wars too.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to.
Well, that's just cuts you out of modern typically, but yeah, it's like you're playing Star Wars. You have an RCQ. You have work.
Right.
You have your second job.
Yeah. It's tough to be like, oh, I'm gonna come to Standard and then Pioneer and then play Star Wars on Thursday and then do an RCQ on the weekend and like.
Right.
Yeah,
the schedule of a grinder can get kind of crazy. So, if you like Pioneer, I would say just keep enjoying it. If you don't care about RCQs, Pioneer is probably like the format for you. If you want to play Standard, it has never really been a better time to play. It's only going to continue to get better if you're a Standard player. Everything's going to be like for Standard players. All the rewards, all the payoffs, every big event. Store championships are back, and they're giving out pretty cool promos.
Oh yeah, I'm so amped. Those go for the throats. I'm coming.
Oh, that's Store Showdown, but championship like, once a set. I'm sure we're gonna see more types of like full art textless cards that are like insane. I know we got the people weren't hyped on Void Winter, but to me that was a great card. It's like a commander staple. They're selling for like $120 right now. Julian traded his in yesterday for like $80 of store credit after winning. And you guys played in the final of our store champs, which was cool.
That was cool.
Shout out to Julian. And like these promos are really cool, and it's all going to be standard events, guys. Like literally going forward, just if you see a cool event, 9 out of 10 times it's going to be standard. So it's just like this is the right time to join the bandwagon.
So speaking of standard, the meta is finally starting to really settle down. Like it's looking right. There is a lot of brewing. There is a lot of fringe decks, but there's kind of been
a ton of tier 2.
Yeah, there's been solidified like the top 9 decks, 10 decks in the format being Golgari mid-range, Dimir mid-range, Gruul Prowess / Mono Red. I know the decks are different, but like they're built very similar. It's just like green has like protection and sometimes questing druid, like for more card draw.
There's 3 aggro decks. They're all good.
Yeah.
They're literally all good.
They're all good and they share a lot of cards. There's mono white caretakers / control. I know that Stan doesn't like to call it control, so I put it in parentheses in the
At this point,
thing.
I'm just willing to die on the hill, and you guys can leave me there. You can call caretakers a control deck. We'll pretend.
Then there's domain.
It goes to time like a control deck.
Right. Boros Burn. Teamer Flood color combo, blue white tempo, which is
The Oculus deck.
Oculus deck,
With Kiora now, which is awesome.
so awesome. And then Jeskai Convoke.
Yeah.
Those are the top tier decks.
And realistically, among them, like there are front runners. Like there is a big three effectively with this, which is like Golgari, Dimir, and then whatever aggro deck you pick. And if you go to an RCQ, that's half the room is those three decks at least.
Yeah, and so Julian and I are going to the Grand Prix. Didn't know if we said it earlier, but
We didn't actually.
Yeah, him and I are going to the Grand Prix in Atlanta at the beginning of the year. We're going to play in the standard event. I'm probably going to hit Star Wars that first day. And he, I think, is going to be locking Golgari mid-range, and I think I will be locking in Dimir mid-range. And one of the things about Golgari is that I was really worried that elves were going to break the format, and that elves were going to be like, oh my gosh, we have like, he even said,
Llanowar elves.
Yeah. He's like, man, if I can unholy annex on turn 2, and I've done that a few times, it feels really crazy. I was like, yeah, that sounds broken. That sounds dumb. However, the difference in standard, and I said this week, the difference between standard and like Pioneer is that 8 elf versus 4 elf is like the level of consistency doesn't feel like in standard, oh my gosh, every game I have elf on 1.
Yeah.
And so that has really made me be like, okay, elves are okay. They're still very powerful. They're very good. But because we only have 4 instead of 8, it's made it like okay and not like making things run away like I thought it was going to.
And I do think that for what it's worth, standard is so efficient right now. I would honestly argue even more efficient than like Pioneer in some ways, where the turn 1 elf I wouldn't even put as like a top play. Like if you had it, like obviously phenomenal for your deck, but like there's so many other like play patterns in standard that are like, oh, I resolved this. That's way better for me than my opponent having a turn 1 elf. And obviously cut downs of things still. So like cut down's always going to keep a lot of these cards in check. But like 2-mana removal is so efficient, and even in some ways not good enough for some of these decks where like if you elf and then like I've had opponents get like, oh, I drew 2 of them or 3 of them. I've had an opponent like draw 3 elves against me online, and they're like, well, I'm turning these sideways. You really start to see how bad the card can be when it's like your 29th land in a lot of like average play. But the people that are using it efficiently, like Frank said, it's going to be nutty. Like turn 2 Glissa, turn 2 Annex, turn 2 whatever they decide. And then I swear there's going to be somebody that figures out Tyvar, because I do think that card is powerful. But like Elf into Tyvar, if they ever wanted to like get some kind of like deck built around that could also be pretty reasonable. You know what I'm talking about? The Tyvar that can like make himself indestructible.
Yeah.
You like tap and untap guy, he gets indestructible. I think that card is like reasonable.
I thought you meant the Planeswalker Tyvar.
Oh, well, there are also Tyvar decks too.
I haven't seen that list, and I was like, wait a minute, why aren't the Reanimator decks just doing Rona and that?
I've seen people playing Tyvar with like an Abzan shell, because there's a lot of aristocrat style decks that are running around, and they're very cool. Like there's like the vampire that's like, oh, every time a creature dies, drain for 1. And you have so many cards now that are like, I make a guy when I die, whether it's a manifest or a 1/1 insect flyer or whatever. And then there was a card that got played against me that was like, was it Return to the Ranks that's legal now, where you return all the 2-drops or whatever? There was a card that got printed that can like basically reanimate all your tiny guys out of the graveyard.
I know what you're talking about, but it's not Return to the Ranks.
Right. It's something else, but it was on that level. And playing against aristocrats, honestly, those for a tier 2 deck, pretty strong shell. A lot of options for it. You don't even need Tyvar in some ways, the Planeswalker. But there's just like so many things you could be doing in the format right now. And that even still puts the tier 1 decks that we talked about, like tier 1, tier 1.5, where like I might put like Floodcaller, Domain, Jeskai Convoke as like a 1.5 deck, where they're like obviously a front runner, but I don't think they're on the same level as like Dimir or Golgari. But these decks are still afraid of what tier 2 deck might show up, especially if it's like a bad matchup. You don't want to be the guy playing Caretaker's Talent and then everybody in the room's on black, like between Deadly Cover Up and Duress, and then God forbid you play against Domain as a Caretaker's deck, and I think Domain's just like a better mid-range deck for the head-to-head, where they're popping your Caretakers, and then they have Leyline Binding and you don't. And then in some ways, there's just like, whether or not you play like Aristocrats or a Reanimator Shell. Julian and I built a deck recently that was like performing pretty well for us. That was Dimir Zombify. And it started off as black-white because we wanted to play Rite of the Flood Maul, draw discard.
Of course, it started off as black-white.
Yeah. I mean, Rite of the Flood Maul feels pretty good until you realize that Zombify is just as good, if not better, because you don't have the finality counter. And like we mentioned earlier, reanimating Valgavoth on turn 4, that has won me so many games in Standard.
Which is so funny that you say that, because like Rite of the Moth for like a minute was like the new Reanimator spell, and now that Zombify is here, it's like, boop,
oh, I'm actually reanimating.
Get out of here! Yeah.
You don't lose life for it. Like, it's crazy. The deck that we built, it was literally like you would go turn 1, turn 2 removal. Like, we were playing 4 cutdowns and then like 4 bitter triumphs because you could discard. Mm-hmm. And then we had Valgavoth Atrexa and Sire of 7 Deaths because we're playing Urborg Scavengers. So our 3 drops are 4 Kiora, 4 Urborg Scavengers. So we have like literally 3 plan A's, whether it's Kiora beating your ass because we have Threshold instantly. And I think we also had like Picklock Prankster in the deck. So like turn 2 could have been that. And then you have easy access to Threshold with Picklock Prankster and everything else. And Kiora draw discard on ETB. Insane. Urborg Scavengers reads like a Soul Flayer, where you can exile a card when it comes in and when he attacks out of a graveyard, and he gains all their keywords in a 1/1 counter. I've had so many games against aggro where like, steal your haste guy, attack, target my Zetalpa or my Sire of 7 Deaths or my Atrexa in the graveyard. Even though I exile them and I can't zombify them anymore, my guy is like a 4/4 with like 40 keywords. And then we have even Valgavoth Slayer in the deck just so we can get hexproof off of that, exiling it out of the graveyard. And it's a really good discard to Kiora. It was just so disgusting. And that's just like a tier 2 deck that we brewed on the fly, started making it better to like play to the format. And I was like crushing Dimir midrange with it in online games because they just couldn't deal with Valgavoth.
There's no way for me to deal with that card.
Right.
Unless I counter the thing, there's no way for me to deal with it.
Once it resolves, you're just like,
I lose.
It's sweet. And it has lifelink. It's a 9/9. It's insane. Gabe and I were working on a different deck, and that was Boros Equipments. And at first I was like, this is kind of a meme. But it's like Boros Equipments, 4 Sheltered by Ghost, 4 Kellen, Fey-Blooded. You can tutor for Sheltered by Ghost. We have a one
Sheltered by Ghost is such a good card.
Do you remember War Whip, the Blade Oni War Whip, whatever it's called? I can't remember the full name of the card. It's like
yes.
From Phyrexian LV1.
Yeah.
How busted that deck would be if you drafted it, because all your equipments are like free to equip. We have one of that you can tutor for with the Kellen, and then it's like 4 of the Blacksmith's Talent. And we're playing Warden of the Inner Sky too, so when you get like Leyline Axe for free in your opening hand and like a Blacksmith's Talent or whatever, you're like, scry, get to my good cards. Big Nahiri from March Aftermath, where whenever an equipped creature attacks, you can exile the top card of your deck and you can play it as if you drew it.
We're really cooking.
It's crazy.
But it sounds good.
Yeah, and it's just equipment. It started off like where we were like kind of struggling. Eventually we figured it out, and we're like, man, this is actually like not bad. And again, whenever I played against like a mirror, like a meta deck like Golgari or something, I'm like beating up on these guys with like a tier 2 homebrew deck. I just feel like Standard has so much untapped potential. If you want to see some of these crazy brews, Julian's always posting like deck lists that he'll find that like randomly won some side event in like Japan or whatever, and he's like, look at this brew. But there's just a lot of cool options in the format right now.
Well, and what I think that's so awesome about that, and kind of what I was gonna get to with all of this, is that, right, one of the things that people talk about with Modern and why it's so great is because you pretty much could expect to see 20 different decks in the format, because there are a lot of tier 2 options that like are good. And right now,
it's nice too because sometimes they end up being tier 1 decks randomly.
Yeah, well, especially with the field that you have in the room, like sometimes like your like not necessarily homebrew, but your tier 2 deck could be like really great against the field.
Right.
And so there are 9 meta like tier 1, tier 2 decks. And for me, I'm like, That's more than we've had in Pioneer in a long time.
Yeah,
To have
yeah.
9 decks that are like, these are all good.
Right.
And then on top of that, there's all this brewing that you said, but mono black is a deck.
Right.
Blue white enchantments is still a deck.
Right.
Reanimator is still a deck.
Boros enchantments even.
Yeah, recently we saw this week I saw Selesnya mid-range, which
Yep.
looked very similar to the Selesnya Coco version
Sure.
in Pioneer, but not taxes.
It's like
and
Aven Interrupter.
no, they're not doing the taxes piece. They're still playing like 4 of the white Enduring
Okay.
Innocence, and they're playing Overlord of the Mistmoors. So you're getting, the
So what
draws
was the
off
green
of.
for? Like elves?
You know what? I'm just gonna have to pull it up now.
All right, he's gonna pull it up. I'm excited. I
Yeah.
actually haven't seen this deck list he's talking about, but it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really, really sweet.
I'm glad I have like every card on Arena somehow. But
Yeah, I know, and you play way less than I do.
yeah, definitely play less than Frank. But I'm really efficient about always making sure I get those dailies done. If I see like the 15 winner, I'm grinding mono red.
True. I'm grinding mono red, and you could be grinding mono red now too. It's good.
Exactly. When aggro's good, getting your dailies done is so nice. You're just like, okay, do I care about playing today? Yes, play. If not, get those dailies done and do it as fast as possible. They want you to sit there for 4 hours. Don't give them the satisfaction.
Okay, so it's playing 4 elf,
Okay.
2 nurturing pixie, 3 paw patch recruit.
Nurturing Pixie is the one that bounces the card.
Yeah, and it gets a 1/1 counter.
That's on your junction.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Paw patch recruit, which is the one when you target your stuff, like you get counters.
When they target your stuff.
Yeah, when they target
got
your
it.
stuff. Yeah. Kellen, the split skin doll.
Yeah, the one that makes a map or whatever, or treasure. Or,
Yep.
Yeah.
Sunbless healer.
Sunbless Healer, which one was that?
Sunbless Healer is the new one from Foundations. It's the 3/1 that when you kick it, it's a 3/1 with lifelink, and you can pay 1 and a white to kick it. When this creature enters, if it was kicked, return target non-land permanent with card
lot of bouncing
with mana value
stuff.
2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Okay.
Playing 3 Toby, Beastie Befriender,
Oh, Toby is so good.
and then playing 4 Collector's Cage.
Collector's Cage, is that the... Okay, I can't remember what that one was.
1 and a white artifact with Hideaway 5. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Then, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you may play
Yeah.
the exiled card without paying its mana
Yeah.
cost.
Oh my god, there's no way they're playing that. That's so funny.
Yeah, 4 of them. 4 Sheltered by Ghosts and 2 Virtue of Loyalties.
Shelter by Ghost is insane. It really
And
does support a lot of decks.
This went 5 and 3 in the challenge.
Yeah.
So that list popped up. I'm seeing a lot of what they're calling Simic Tempo, which
Yeah.
looks really similar.
Oh, it's the same deck we've been talking about, like Tolarian Terror, right?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
Tolarian Terror blue,
Tolarian Terror
blue
deck.
green. They're calling it
saw
Sultai.
somebody-
They're calling it Sultai because they're playing like Rona's Vortex,
Right.
And like they've got black cards in their
Sure.
sideboard, but like it's really Simic.
Yeah. It is
With,
Simic.
with black cards
We've
in the
talked about
sideboard.
this deck before. I saw somebody post a photo, I think.
But
on
it's
George.
been winning.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
it's been winning
The deck is solid.
well.
If you have like 8 flash 5/5s, one of them is like tapping your opponent's cards. I think I saw somebody on George Jabor's Discord post a photo where somebody went like field nuke, and he went in response. This town ain't big enough. Bounced my Tolarian Terrors, both of them to my hand, and opponent's field nuke only killed like a token, and he's like, cool. Play all my guys out again. They're all 1/1s, or they're all 1-drops. They're all like Gurmag Anglers with text. Because like the Ward 2 really can get there, like force them to have they can't double spell. They have to have a field nuke.
Well, and the most efficient decks in the format, Golgari and Dimir, like it's just spot removal.
Right.
That's all the deck has.
Yeah,
even
so like
even in the
you
sideboard.
have to have 8 mana to be able to go for the throw 2 guys.
Yeah,
it's like it's
and
not happening.
Unreal.
So cool.
Yeah, and so like
The other one's like Eddie Tail, whatever it's called, and that one
Eddie Mercrab?
Eddie Mercrab stuns a guy. with
Ed
nothing.
and Eddie Crab. Yeah.
I like that card a lot, actually. Yeah, Simic is a sweet deck. Simic Temple is honestly a good deck to play if you're a beginner. It really kind of hones in like learning how to play at instant speed. It kind of like makes you desire it, almost like Simic Flash back during like Ravnica Allegiance with Frilled Mystic. You were super rewarded for playing all on their turn with Frilled Mystic Counterspell, Werewolf Pack Leader, whatever his name was, the 4-mana werewolf that would like, oh, you didn't cast a spell? I make a 2/2. as long as you're playing on their turn or something like that. And then Brine-born Cutthroat, which is legal again. So there could be like a Flash archetype going on already.
Yeah. And so, like, to put that into perspective, we just talked about his brews, 9 meta decks, mono black, blue white, enchantments, reanimator, Selesnya, Simic. We're up to like
20 something.
yeah,
decks.
like
It's starting to
yeah,
look like modern.
yeah, it's starting to look like modern.
And honestly, a lot of that comes from the expansion of the format, where we don't have a limitation on how many sets are legal. Like if you're talking like standard evolution, standard in the 90s used to be like 4-5 sets, and that was standard, and that was a big deal. And then you'd get the 6th set, and the last 2 would leave or something. And now we're like at 14 sets or something like that, between like Dominaria, Brothers War, Obi-Wan, March Aftermath, Eldraine, Ixalan, Murders, Outlaws, Bloomborough, Duskborn Foundation. That's 12 sets. And then we're getting Aether Drift, and that's 13 sets. And then Final Fantasy is 14 sets. And I'm pretty sure rotation doesn't happen until the 15th set. So like that's kind of cool. Like a lot of cards in the format. Nothing that's kind of too particularly broken, like we had with Rafine for a while there. Speaking of which, I know you said you really like Dimir because it kind of has similar gameplay to Esper Rafine. But like, man, I feel like Rafine in this format would be like really having a heyday.
Oh yeah, it would be really broken. I think that basically I compared Rafine to Enduring Curiosity.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
dude, imagine having both.
Right. So the thing is that like Rafine was better in the sense that like it was a body that attacked, it was evasive, it was in the air, and the part that was really great about the card that I miss is that you could filter away the cards that are bad for the matchup, right? Because it's standard, so you're trying to prepare for multiple different decks.
Yep.
There's a lot of decks where like even in Golgari, I side out Cut Down because the only thing it hits is Mosswood Dread Knight, which you don't want to kill,
Right.
and Elf.
Right.
And so I'm like, I don't care about his 4 elves. I'm going to kill anything that he plays with
It's
the
so
elf.
much better to have an Annoyance with Affliction. And if you hit
Right.
the elf, you hit the elf, whatever. But if you get rid of Mosswood Dread Knight, he's gone forever.
Right. And so Rafine really was great about A, filtering away cards that were bad, and then B, digging you closer towards like, oh, if I just get this counter magic, then like when I swing in, I'm not going to be able to be killed because I'm digging towards a counter spell to like win the game.
Yeah, Rafine was so particularly broken where it's like, it doesn't matter if I have 2 cards in hand. They just have to be the 2 cards.
Right, exactly. And so
Curiosity and Kaito are like, we're just going to have 20 cards in hand. Like, it doesn't matter.
yeah, and so that's what I miss about Rafine. But what's better about Enduring Curiosity is that Enduring Curiosity, one, you kind of can use as like a kill spell in the sense that you can just be like, I'm going to block,
Right.
and then it's back as an enchantment.
Right.
The other thing is that you draw so many more cards with Enduring Curiosity than
Yep.
you did.
And you get to keep them.
Yeah, I described Enduring Curiosity as like that feeling of like when I was playing Domain, where like when your opponent sticks a beans and you're like, well, that beans is going to be there, and I know they're going to eventually just draw tons of cards. Like the inevitability of drawing cards off of Curiosity is just crazy.
Yeah.
Because even they could board wipe. Cool. I'm going to swing in with my Restless Reef. I'll make you mill 4. It's going to connect. I'm going to draw another card, and I'm starting to refill again.
Yeah.
I never feel like I can't refill. And sometimes with Rafine, it was like if they removed the body, then I was never drawing the cards.
Yeah, there was no catch up either. Like, you were just dead typically.
Yeah, and so it's like it's similar to how that deck was, and different at the same time. Like I like having 3 steps ahead. I really like having Phantom Interference. I think Phantom Interference is better than like the counter package that we had during Esper's time. But
Oh, like make disappear and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, I do think Phantom Interference is like it's cute. Like the fact that you can make the body with it is really nice. I love it in Azorius Oculus because you get the Haughty discount. So many games where I'm playing Azorius Oculus and I go Haughty one blue mana open, go. And people always like walk into like the fact that it's a spell pierce now, and it can counter anything. So like that's kind of crazy, like super mana tithe, if you will, and that catches people so many times. And if they don't catch it because they realize you have the counter spell, it's like you're still invalidating their turn. They have to like respect it or play into it. Neither is really that good for them, unless they can double spell, which is like usually hard. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, and on top of that too, I feel like the way that Enduring Curiosity interacts with Shieldred, that's why I actually went up a Shieldred for this challenge showcase.
The Sword Show, Championship.
Championship. I can never remember the names of all this crap. But the Store Championship, which they're awesome, by the way. I felt really good. I like got to the finals, played against Julian. He's on Golgari mid range. I think that matchup is slightly favored, but I lost in 3. Like they were all games that were like grindy, close. But their interaction with like Shieldred and Curiosity feels like Shieldred in the One Ring.
Yeah.
You're drawing so many cards that you're like I was playing against Robert, who was on Jeskai aggro, and I was like, cool, swing for $1 million. I'm going to draw all these cards. I'm holding up removal. And I just gained a bunch of life. I don't even care if you can like land an Ibidane's Recruiter because like I'm gaining so much life off of this Curiosity. And so
it gets you back in the game.
Yeah.
And there's so many decks that can do this type of thing where they're gaining a ton of life once they figure out how to get to that life gain, which I really like because Screaming Nemesis is like a hell of a card. It's like $30 now. And yes, it is.
Speaking of which, you still have mine, Gabe. You never gave it back.
It is that good. It really is. Like, we talked about Screaming Nemesis and we talked about how hyped that card was. It is the truth. It is such a good card for the aggro decks, including another deck you were talking about that Gabe kind of brewed, where Gabe has like a weird brew that's like 4 Shieldred, 4 Scrapping Crawlers, 4 Razorkin Needle, whatever it's called, Needlehead, because all the cards say whenever your opponent draws a card, they get punished. And so he's playing that with Screaming Nemesis. All of a sudden, they can't gain life anymore. Every time they draw a card, they're that much closer to death. And the fact that Screaming Nemesis just cuts off the life gain if they don't respect it, but keeps putting in the damage, they effectively unblockable until they're ready to like deal with it. Must have a kill spell, or you're gonna die to it. That card gives so much to the anti-life gain plan and to the aggro plan. I'm kind of glad that every other deck kind of has their way of like, well, if I can survive the onslaught, I have Aclazotz or Shieldred or Caretaker's talent has like the Bunny Cake, or whatever it's called. The 2-drop Carrot Cake. Yeah,
Carrot Cake. I was like, Regal Bunicorn?
Apologies. Maybe this drink's hitting a little harder than I thought. So like between Carrot Cake and like all these ways to gain life, every deck kind of has their way to grind through it for the most part. And obviously the ones that don't, they just can't deal with aggro. But I really like kind of I love these like dynamics that just exist in the overall like, in addition to like this deck beats this deck, there's also like these themes of like, these color of decks all share like 3 or 4 unique cards, and depending on what deck they're playing, they might be playing this or that, and so you have to make sure you have the response or something that can answer that. And it really kind of like feels so much more tactical, which is like one of the reasons why I love Standard so much. It's like it's always so much more tactical than like more modern. It's just like we're slamming haymakers. How can I force mine to hit you in the head as fast as possible? I think the World Championships really solidified it for me. I had more than one like rookie player go, I want to play Standard. I was watching that World Championships and I'm like, why were you watching it? They're like, I was just bored. It was on YouTube, and they were like, the games were just so sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were, even as like an expert player, I was watching these games like, God damn, you know?
Yeah, well, I even had like a game where I was playing Demir. It was the game I lost to Domain here at the championship, where I got to a point where they were drawing so many cards with beans, and like we were just going back and forth so much that like I got within 2 turns of like milling them with Restless Reefs. Yeah. And so it's like shifting from being like, okay, I'm no longer going to kill you this way. I have the ability to try and kill you this way. Like it's a lot of the game can swing back and forth, and it feels kind of like a boxing match.
Right.
And that's the kind of Magic that I like, where it's like, where my decisions really matter, and the state of the game is changing, and my decisions really matter.
Right.
And that's kind of what Standard feels like, and I really dig that.
It is so good. It really is. Anyways, enough simping for Standard.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end of the episode. The last thing we're going to toss in here is...
Yeah, we're 5 minutes over that time you wanted to be.
All right, then I will rush this last segment. Not a lot to talk about anyway, but we did want to talk about Modern just for like the people that are, Modern fans or people that only watch for Modern takes, etc. We haven't forgotten about you, although you do get an RCQ season next year along with like the 90% Standard tournaments. Kind of cool. I'm sure that was intentional. We'll see what the plan is. Although Universes Beyond sets are going to be all straight to Standard going forward, assuming that they stick to that game plan. I'm curious how that's going to look, but we'll talk more about that when it starts happening and what that looks like for the game. It's going to be weird for me as a store owner, but we'll figure it out, I suppose. But yeah, so Modern. What has changed since last there was an RCQ season, like a month and a half or 2 months ago? Not a lot, honestly, but there have been some changes which are cool enough that I think are worth mentioning. One of which is that like Belcher is like tier 1, and it's like not like a meme. It's like actually one of the best decks in the format. It's so funny seeing the Oops All Spells deck just being like playable, but like actually good. Seagate Restorations I think are like $30 or $40 now from Zendikar Raising because of that deck.
Oh my gosh.
You need the untapped blue land, and it's a spell. So like it's just so good. They also play like hydroelectrostatic, whatever it's called, from Modern Horizons 3. That's also like a Bolt land.
Like Sink into Stupor?
Yes, like Sink into Stupor, exactly. Those are just so good for the deck. And honestly, that might have been like partially one of the reason why it's so good now is there's just so many good cards that are like modal double cards for it. But it's just winning, and I think it's hilarious. Because that's just what Modern is. It's always like, oh yeah, there's Tron and like Boros Energy and and then the guy playing Belcher's just like, I do this, 30 damage, I win.
Whee!
Like, what do? I only do this.
And that's what I almost felt like. I finally am gonna give up on trying to be like, oh, I'm gonna play Control and do this, and I feel like I'm gonna become that because I just don't play Modern enough, and especially now with Star Wars.
One deck.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like, all right, Living End, you've lasted this long. I'm just gonna go back to you and be like, did I do it? Did I win?
I just say it again now that you mention it. Put some respect on Living End. I thought it was going to die without Violent Outburst.
I thought it was going to die too.
And hey, you know what?
And it didn't. Around. So I just need to go back to my old reliable, my first Modern deck that I did like really well with.
To be fair, there's a lot of good creature decks in the format right now, ironically enough, and that's probably why Living End being able to just like delete their board and like truly delete it is a big deal. With that being said, the format looks mostly the same. Energy and Frogtide and Ruby. In addition to Underworld Breach, Grinding Station, whatever you want to call it, all still top decks. Jeskai Control still hanging in there. Amulet Titan, Eldrazi Tron, which is like the new Tron deck basically. Goryo's Vengeance, still a deck. Esper Goryo's rather, even without Grief. Living End, still a deck. Domain Zoo, still a deck pretty much. Through the Breach running around, and then there's been like a lot of like Eldrazi decks kind of like lurking around that people are cooking with that are like not necessarily like the main game plans that people are already going for. One of the cooler decks I saw that's been getting played recently as well is there's finally like a solid Fleshraker deck, it looks like, that's like 3 to 4% of the meta. Doesn't sound like a lot, but for Modern, 3 to 4% is a pretty big deal in terms of meta share. Considering like the top 4 decks are all like 10%ers. The Fleshraker deck's cool though because it kind of reminds me of Legacy, where like Fleshraker and Legacy is like specifically very, very good. And they're playing it with like Blade of the Blood Chief as a 4 of, which is so funny. I'm sure like half of you listening don't even know what Blade of the Blood Chief does. Actually, do you mind looking it up just so we can read it for them if they're driving or something? But the Fleshwrecker thing is so cool because you just cast colorless spells into the sky. You make a ton of scions, and then you're supposed to drain them for all of your creatures. And it's like almost like you're playing Eldrazi Aristocrats. And I kind of simp for that play style.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
Blade of the Blood Chief. I only know this because usually during the day I'm like turning on Spike Stream. Like someone is playing Modern and they're like playing tons of it, and so I can just leave it up on my computer.
Right.
Blade of the Blood Chief. 1 mana artifact equipment. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on equipped creature. If equipped creature is a vampire, put 2 1/1 counters on it instead.
Yeah. And you don't need it to be a vampire. You're sacking so many scions or spawns or whatever they are that like whatever you put Blade of the Blood Chief on is gonna like basically kill them. It also matters that you're getting free counters because I think you're playing some of the evolved cards in the deck. I should have pulled up the whole deck list, but it is pretty interesting. It's a cool deck.
Well, it's like the Brood Scale combo, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Super cool. I think it's sweet.
You use Basking Brood Scale.
Right.
It says like whenever one or more counters are put on it from the blade, you just
you just go crazy. And that's also the better part of the deck where you're looping infinite spawns or scions or whatever to just glaring Fleshraker them to death. I don't know if that's what they do in Legacy. I'm pretty sure they're just like way more hyper efficient about it. But I haven't played too much of like new Legacy. I've been still playing Four Horsemen because I'm dumb. But yeah, modern looks fine. I think it's gonna be okay. We'll see if they actually ban the One Ring in the next announcement, like they said they were gonna do. Isn't the announcement coming up in like a Monday or two? Oh no, it's the 1st of December. I'm pretty sure right now. Tomorrow.
Today is the 1st.
Today's the 1st?
Yeah.
Oh, today's the 1st. I forgot that November doesn't have 31 days.
Well, it's also because like Thanksgiving was on like the 28th this year, which is like so weird that it was this late in the month.
Yeah, usually it's a week early, which is what I thought when I was scheduling, and people are like, "No, it's this day." I'm like, "Oh, whoopsies! I should have looked at the calendar." But yeah, it's already December, so by the time you see this episode, we should be pretty close to the ban announcement coming out, and I'm really curious what they're going to do. I mean, most people think it's the One Ring. If you look at the prices, people really think it's the One Ring because One Ring sounds like $40-$50. And if you are listening and you don't have a One Ring or a playset or you really want the card, now's the time to buy it. It's even if it goes a little bit cheaper because it gets banned, that is a Commander staple. It is a Commander staple forever. It's a Legacy staple. It's probably a Legacy staple forever. It's not bad. They're going to play it in Vintage too, I'm assuming, with like Workshop. Card is great. Phenomenal Commander, always. And if they don't ban it, you're going to feel really dumb for not having bought it. But I feel like at this point, I think they just like have to ban it. Everybody that plays Modern has been like crying about it for so long that it's like, well, at this point, if they ban it, whatever. Just make the format good. I don't care. Whatever you do, make the format good.
Yeah.
Whether you ban it or unban it, just give us something. Modern needs a little bit of a shakeup.
I agree.
And maybe less Modern Horizons. Maybe let's chill on the Modern Horizons for a little bit.
See, this is a take I can get behind.
I'm like, I like Modern Horizons as much as the next guy, but like, man, I want to see what Modern looks like with some standard cards in it, you know? With some like actually real cards. Modern Horizons is it was an interesting I respect why they did it, and I don't hate the sets like everybody else does, but it's like a lot of the cards that came out of Modern Horizons are pretty fucking crazy.
Yes. Yep. That no follow-up.
Yeah. I mean, I can appreciate Modern for what it is, and having played Modern for like 10 years or whatever or longer. Oh man, it's been long. It's 2025 now.
Dude. No, stop. That word hurts me.
Okay, haven't played Modern for as long as I have. I've seen Modern from like when it was all boomer decks and old standard decks, and the ban list made no sense. Ban list still doesn't make any sense. To like where it is now, and it's like, I don't know. I've always had fun with it, but Modern Horizons is like, it's like two different eras. Like COVID is like it's like straight up like literally there was some kind of new religion. Their deity like died and 3 days later resurrected, and now we're like in the next era.
next phase.
We're not in AD anymore. It's like whatever post COVID was.
It's like those old movies from last name was Jenkins made them, like Left Behind.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That's where we're at right now.
The leaders.
Yeah.
And shout out to anybody that knows that movie. That is a classic.
Oh man. All right. Well.
Oh, actually, I know what you should comment. I asked Frank this yesterday, 2 days ago in the shop, and then we all started talking about it. If you know what this means, answer. If you don't know, ask. What is like what's your favorite moment in like cinema or like, I guess for Frank, plays, like history, like moment in like a show where you were like, damn, that went hard, like some kind of crazy moment. Like, let us know, because I want to know everybody's thoughts like on this. We didn't have a disagreement or anything. Gabe was like, what was your moment? I was like, I didn't have one. I'm just asking you guys. So now I'm asking you guys. Let me know. What is
I did not know that you didn't have one.
Yeah, I didn't have one. I was just like, I just want to know. Let's just talk, So let us know what your guys' favorite like cinematic moment or the most like, damn, that went hard. Something crazy, even if it's just a piece of dialogue. Something happened in a movie. Even link the clip if you want in the comments if they let you. I want to see some hot takes.
Hot takes. What goes hard?
But anyways, anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's our show. So, you know what? Thanks so much for tuning in. Shout outs, as always, first to Borsack Gaming for allowing us to have our episode in their store. If you were looking to get foundations, those One Rings, whatever the case may be, please go ahead and order from here. He will ship anywhere and quickly.
Actually, I can't ship to Canada right now. Apparently, there's some kind of strike going on.
Yeah, rest in peace, Canada.
Yeah, rest
but
in peace.
Outside of Canada, we will get stuff to you.
Shout out Sal. He's like our new editor in chief at the moment, helping us out, helping to hopefully make sure that the sound and the video match. I did a new recording style this time, so please, God, let this have worked. And Sal will hopefully fix it if it doesn't. But with that being said, be a little patient with us on it.
Yeah, trying our best. He also does, he supplies us with our cameras and does our thumbnails.
He does the thumbnails too.
Sal
so
has
lately,
all
if
the
you have
hats.
ideas for thumbnails, let us know. He's always down to take ideas and put us in different outfits or whatever. What's it called? Shout out to his channel as well, MTG Chicago. All of our weekly gameplay goes to that channel. And if you want to see some cool gameplay or our games, they're going to be on that channel as well. Shout outs to Nancy Steroids for the intro and outro music that you're probably hearing right now. And he also does the music whenever Frank's is streaming. And honestly, I'll be honest, usually I mute streamers when I'm watching them. Nancy Steroids has some bangers. He's got some bangers. I'm not gonna lie, it's not annoying to listen to.
Feels like some good lo-fi stuff. Like while I'm because I'm usually streaming late at night, so it's like pitch black because it's pitch black at like 4 p.m. now. And
some streamers they be listening to some crazy stuff, and I'm just like, man, I can't. I'm getting a migraine. And I listen to K-pop, so like that should tell you what I'm there.
That should say a lot.
What's it called? Shout outs as always to the patrons for supporting the show. We really appreciate you, and for those that are just with us for the ride, like, comment, subscribe. It really goes a long way. It really helps us with the show and the algorithm. And honestly, the fact that you're even watching is a big deal for us. So we really appreciate you guys. Anybody we're missing?
I don't think so.
I think that's everybody. If we miss somebody, let us know. I really feel bad whenever
I'll come and thank you personally. Big kiss from me if I missed.
We'll respond, I promise. Anyways, you guys have a good one. That's our show. And catch us next time for episode 45 when we talk about something.
Yeah, see you next time.
Peace.